At the celebration party for the new CEO's inauguration, I couldn't find my place card. As I wandered around, looking confused, Manager Smith came over with a smirk. "Hey, what are you looking for?" I didn't want to admit it to Smith, but reluctantly I told him I could not find my seat. Then Smith pointed at the foot of a chair at the edge of the wall, used for folding bags. "There's your place card," he said, carelessly thrown beneath it. "Your chair's been repurposed as a luggage spot. No seat for a middle school graduate here." "Oh, that's what it was," I replied. Smith had intentionally moved the chair that was supposed to be mine, stacked some unknown bags on it, and placed the seating chart beneath it. "Someone without a seat wandering around is just in the way. Get out of here quick." I decided to follow Smith's advice. "I'll be leaving then, but don't come to me for help later," he said right after the chairman appeared and asked, "Where's the president's son?" "My name is Sam Williams, 30 years old. I work for the hotel division of Brown Electronics, a major appliance manufacturer." The hotel division is essentially the department responsible for handling electronics related to hotel amenities. We not only install new products but also perform replacement maintenance on products that have been in use for some years. It's a busy department, but one could argue it's more interesting than just selling appliances. Once our division's manager was transferred overseas, and his replacement was a new boss who had been the sales director at a subsidiary. The newly appointed manager Smith was known for his overwhelming sales abilities. We in the hotel division were looking forward to his arrival with great anticipation. "From today, I'm counting on you all with me here. We're going to outpace the competition and aim to be the top seller in the hotel industry. Everyone keep that spirit and work hard." The new manager made a very reassuring inaugural address that inspired us to give our best. However, that was only at the beginning. The first thing the new sales director, Smith, did was conduct background checks on all the employees. He dug into everything: sales performance, educational background, family structure, and past careers. The purpose wasn't clear, but Smith's rationale was as follows: by thoroughly understanding what kind of person each employee is, we can identify the most suitable sales style for them. That way, each person's performance improves, which in turn boosts the entire department's performance. The previous manager did pay attention to the humanity of his employees, though he never conducted evaluations like it was an interview for prospective hires. It seems that each person has their different approach. Smith listens carefully to each individual, and as he said, it seems he discusses various strategies tailored to that employee. Then came the day of my interview. Summoned by Smith, I responded to other employees' encouragement with a fist pump and headed to the manager's office. I knocked 3 times on the office door, waited to be invited in, and then entered. It felt like I was taking a job interview, making me nervous. It was nostalgic, yet I thought I shouldn't have to go through this again. My heart was pounding with mixed feelings. As I waited in the manager's office, Smith looked me up and down from his seat and suddenly asked, "Your record shows your highest education is middle school. Is that correct?" Due to some circumstances, I indeed only went to school up to middle school. I had no intention to hide it, nor could I lie when I honestly admitted it. Smith sighed heavily and said, "I wonder why someone who only finished middle school was hired at our company. I don't need a middle school educated bottom-rung guy under me. Remember, if you mess up, I'll fire you immediately," he declared. Although I was surprised by Smith's declaration, I didn't expect anything worse to happen and thought as long as I maintained my sales performance, I wouldn't be criticized. After all, that was the only option I had. My dropping out of high school is a fact that can't be changed now, but until now it has never been a problem, so I just kept working as usual. But it seems that was too naive. "Williams, what's going on with this? Is there a problem?" "A problem, you say?" Smith slammed the documents he was holding onto the desk with a loud thud. "What's this about the sales at Sada Hotel that you're handling?" I realized then what this was about. Sada Hotel had primarily been handling budget inbound traffic from abroad due to the global situation. Its financial health declined, and it even shut down once until a new owner took over and it could operate again. Even after the reopening, there wasn't a budget to install new electronics. They were just managing to keep going with minimal maintenance and the bare essentials for replacements. However, with the gradual revival of inbound traffic, the business is looking up and is expected to bounce back soon. I explained this to Smith, but he wouldn't accept it at all, scolding me as if it were my personal failure. Stop making excuses. This is why I hate having bottom-rung high school dropouts. Listen, if you don't recover Sada Hotel's figures by the end of this month, you'll be fined. And with that, he declared, our company doesn't have a system for fines. The senior staff told me this, but Smith said, we don't need it for excellent grads like me or you, but it's necessary for hopeless cases like Williams who only finished middle school. He emphasized this point again to me. Make sure you understand, you need to recover those figures by the end of the month. Ultimately, the situation didn't improve quickly, and that month I truly had 10% of my salary taken as a fine, and I didn't receive my sales bonus either. Smith said he couldn't pay a sales allowance to employees who weren't making an effort. Listen, this is the new policy for this department. If you're not serious, I'll keep applying this tough love, especially to those who can't understand any better. It seemed absurd, but Smith said this while looking me straight in the eye. Fortunately, Smith's tough love was only applied that one time to me. The reason was that my performance wasn't bad enough to warrant a fine. I was already one of the top performers in the hotel division. Unfortunately, Thousand Oaks Hotel finally returned to its former condition, leaving Smith with nothing to criticize. To avoid any further issues with Smith, I decided to be even more careful and diligent in my work than usual. Smith would look at me disapprovingly, but without any mistakes. He couldn't criticize my performance alone. If he did, he would have to apply the same rules even to the university graduates he praised. Since then, Smith has been unable to do anything to me. The snide remarks continued as usual, and the clicking of tongues at this middle school graduate didn't lessen. However, when I started to think of it as background music I'd hear while walking down the street, it gradually began to bother me less. Humans really do have a remarkable ability to adapt. Just as I was settling into being able to work calmly, there was a change in our company's CEO. The current president retired to become the chairman, and his son, the executive director, was set to take over as CEO. Smith, this is an important day. Let's all do our best to make a great impression for the new CEO, Smith announced to his subordinates with a broad smile. The company will be closed for the day. A large celebration for the new president's inauguration is planned at a grand hotel hall, inviting all employees. Employees left work looking forward to tomorrow. The party starts at noon, and the venue is rented out with tables set up for each department. The hotel division, which I belong to, was located about in the middle towards the right side from the podium. I walked towards the hotel division's table while looking at the seating chart, but something was odd. I circled around, and while I could find the names of Manager Smith and almost everyone else, my name was nowhere to be found. That's strange. I asked a colleague who was sitting down if they had seen my name card, but they just replied they hadn't noticed my name and were just sitting where their own name card was. That might well be the case. As I was wandering around, looking confused, Smith came over with a smirk and approached me. "Hey, what are you looking for?" I didn't want to admit it to Smith, but reluctantly I told him I couldn't find my seat. Then Smith pointed at the foot of a chair by the wall, used for storing luggage. "There's your place card," he said, tossed aside as if it were trash. "Your chair has been used as part of the luggage area. No seat for a high school dropout." "So that was it," I replied. Smith had deliberately moved the chair that should have been mine to the wall, piled some unidentified luggage on it, and put the seating chart under the chair. He did all this to exclude me from the celebration of the new CEO's inauguration. People without seats wandering around are just in the way. "Get out of here quick," Smith said, laughing gleefully. What a petty thing to do, I thought. Honestly, I was appalled by such childish behavior. Here, I decided to just do as Smith said. "I'm leaving then, but if you run into trouble later, don't blame me." "What a bottom-rung middle school graduate like you can make any difference," Smith said. "Our company will not miss you, so just disappear." After leaving the party venue just as it was about to start, a commotion ensued, but I left it for Smith to handle. With that in mind, I hailed a taxi in front of the hotel and went home. Back at my place, I pulled out my smartphone from my bag. I had turned it off when I got into the taxi. About 30 minutes had passed since then. Let's see what's going on, I thought. When I turned on my smartphone, it immediately started blinking blue and alerted me to several messages and voicemails. Just as I swiped to check the messages, a call came through, and I accidentally answered it. Whether it was good timing or bad, Smith was on the other end. "Hello, Sam, it's me, Manager Smith. I'm so glad you finally picked up. Come back to the venue right now." Smith's voice was almost tearful as he spoke. "What can I do for you?" "I left because you told me to leave." "Don't say that. Just come back. If you don't return, it could be serious trouble." "I don't know about that," I replied coldly. "I was just following the manager's orders. I apologize. Please, I'm begging you. Come back. If not, it might be the end for me." "Please," Smith pleaded with a sniffling voice. But that was none of my concern. "I don't know anything about that. That's why I said I won't know anything, no matter what happens." "Don't say things like that," Smith continued. "After you left, the party started immediately, but there was an empty seat in the hotel division, and when the chairman noticed you weren't there, he asked, 'Where is the CEO's son?' I didn't know you were the new president's son and the chairman's grandson. Your name was different, and nobody told me anything about it. And then, if I had known, I wouldn't have said those things. So please come back. I'm really begging you, please." On the phone, Smith kept repeating the same plea over and over. "Anyway, I will tell everyone I left the party venue on Manager Smith's orders. Goodbye." I ruthlessly hung up the phone and turned it off again. Let's see what happens next. Soon after, a card was sent from the venue, and I ended up going back, not because Smith asked me to, but because not doing so might cast doubt on my character. Upon returning, I was immediately shown to my seat, not at the hotel division, but at a new seat prepared for me on the stage. As I took my seat, the host introduced me. "Let us introduce Mr. Sam Brown, the son of the new CEO. Please give him a warm round of applause." Greeted by resounding applause, I sat next to my father, Jack Brown, today's main figure and the new CEO. Next to my father was my grandfather, now the chairman. The host briefly introduced my background and announced that the hotel division of Brown Electronics was becoming an independent subsidiary, and I was to be appointed as its CEO. A murmur ran through the crowd. Prompted by the host, I moved to the microphone to address the gathering. Bowing to the audience, I said, "My name is Sam Brown." For reasons of my own, I had been using the name Williams, but upon taking over as CEO of Brown Hotel Management, I have returned to my real name, Sam Brown. Thank you for your support. There was a moment of confusion in the crowd, but it quickly filled with enthusiastic applause. Smith was nowhere to be seen at the venue, but I guess he didn't have the guts to stick around after that. Due to this, 2 seats at the hotel division table became vacant, but since the division will soon be dissolved, I don't see it as a significant issue. In fact, I had been using the name Williams at the company, but my real name is Brown. I share the last name with my father, the new president, and my grandfather, the chairman, because we are family. This is connected to the fact that I was a middle school dropout. I was about to graduate from middle school when I had to be hospitalized for a long term for my illness. I had already passed the entrance exam of the high school, but I had to be hospitalized for over 6 months, leading me to reluctantly decline my high school entrance. The hospital had an in-hospital class for long-term hospitalized children, which included elementary and middle school students, but high school students were not eligible. Thus, I was taught by a tutor remotely, but with treatments and days I could only lie in bed due to pain. I didn't progress as much as I would have liked in my studies. Still, I loved studying and was determined not to let this setback stop me. As a result, I couldn't go to high school, but I passed the college entrance qualification exams and was eligible for university admissions. After I got accepted into a university, unfortunately, my illness relapsed, and I had to give up on attending university. I became despondent, lost all motivation to study in the hospital, and even became reluctant about my treatments. That's when a friend of my mother suggested that maybe my name was bringing bad luck. Although skeptical, my mother was desperate enough to cling to anything that might help. During those times, she consulted a priest from a known shrine who shared an interesting anecdote about names in various parts of the world. Even today, it's a custom to give young children unappealing names to protect them from being taken by evil spirits. For example, names related to dirt or animals, or even crude terms, are used to trick spirits into thinking the child is not desirable. Once the child is old enough to fend for themselves against such evils, they are given their proper name or called by their real name. While this practice has declined in medically advanced countries, there are still regions where child mortality is high, and where I lived used to be one of those places. In such contexts, misleading names were given to protect children from malevolent forces. The priest suggested that if I was feeling so down, why not try using a provisional name? Whether there's anything to the notion of names bringing bad luck, who knows? But after facing illness twice, one starts to feel uncertain about many things. It seemed like a good idea to change things up, even just for the sake of feeling better. Obviously, a name meaning filth was out of the question, but then it was suggested to use my mother's maiden name for a while. So I began going by Williams outwardly. My mother also asked the hospital to list both Williams and Brown on my medical records. The hospital staff didn't seem thrilled, but they cooperated reluctantly after my mother insisted. Initially, I honestly thought it was just a silly superstition, but human emotions are a curious thing. Seeing my mother confidently smile and saying this name change would definitely make me better, I gradually began to feel like maybe everything would be all right, and perhaps it was this change in mindset that helped, because to my surprise, I quickly regained my health. My mother was thrilled, believing the name change had worked wonders. The real reason for my recovery was unclear, but since it made my mother happy, I decided to continue using the name Williams for a while. Although I had given up on attending college, I found a new avenue for education in an organization similar to an economic study group. My father introduced me to this group after he learned I was studying economics on my own, suggesting I might like to join there. I studied various aspects of business management and finance. I also learned languages including English, German, and Chinese. I then joined my grandfather's company, concealing my identity as his grandson, and have been there ever since. I was 22 at the time, the same age as most new college graduates. In fact, I was the one who proposed starting the hotel division. Both my grandfather and father liked the idea and agreed to it, and the new division was created concurrently with my joining the company. My goal was to eventually make this division an independent subsidiary, and through hard work and recognition in various quarters, I finally achieved it. After the party, I decided to inquire about what happened to Smith, just to keep informed. When my grandfather, the chairman, asked his secretary why I wasn't at my seat, Smith confidently replied, at such a grand celebration for the new president's inauguration. It's the perfect opportunity to shape up our department. Brown Electronics doesn't need the dead weight of a middle school graduate. Upon learning that I was the dead weight referred to, my grandfather personally came over to ask again where the president's son was. It was at this point that Smith realized I was that son, and in a panic he called me. My grandfather's secretary was in the lobby, urging me to come back. Seeing Smith and realizing that I wouldn't make it back in time for the inauguration speech of the new company, they sent a car to pick me up. Smith was sent home with a promise to speak with him in detail later. 2 days after the party, in the presence of my grandfather, father, and myself, 3 generations, Smith was asked to explain why he acted as he did. Smith explained that his father was a middle school graduate who hardly worked, spent his days drinking, and would become violent towards his wife and daughter when angry. Growing up in such a home, Smith developed a hatred for middle school graduates and a desire to exclude them. While it is tragic to hear of such a family environment, it is still no excuse for a leader to demean and attempt to expel someone simply because they are a dropout. My grandfather and father demanded an explanation of Smith's actions, and I honestly disclosed everything. There was no need to cover for him, nor did I intend to. It also came to light that Smith had embezzled money that should have been paid to me as a sales allowance and a part of my salary as a fine. He had pressured accounting staff to create separate pay slips for my salary alone, facilitating this embezzlement. It was a minor amount, but it was outright embezzlement. Just to be sure, before coming to the headquarters, an investigation was conducted at the subsidiary where Smith had previously worked. Fortunately, because there were no middle school graduates among Smith's subordinates, no similar incidents were found. As a result, the threatened accounting employee received a punishment of a 3-month salary reduction and had to submit a letter of reflection, while Smith was demoted and transferred to a regional factory. In that factory, there are many employees who are middle school graduates, the very kind of people Smith despises. The world is full of different people who all work hard and live their lives to the fullest, whether they are high school or college graduates, low-ranking employees, or part-timers. The decision was made in the hope that by working together with a diverse group, Smith would come to understand this. However, it seems he couldn't bear working alongside those he had looked down upon, and he ultimately resigned. I heard Smith's story and could understand that despite his difficult upbringing, he worked hard to graduate from a prestigious university and secured a job at our highly regarded company. He even climbed the ladder to become a manager. However, that does not justify his disdain and unfair treatment of people just because they are middle school graduates. This time the target happened to be me, and it ended this way perhaps because I am the CEO's son. If it had been a regular employee whom Smith had managed to drive out, he might have continued the same practice. If he had developed a taste for embezzlement, the amounts could have increased, potentially causing significant financial damage to the company. Thus, while I can sympathize with Smith's circumstances, I cannot condone his actions. Everyone has their own circumstances they live with. I hope that Smith realizes this in his new environment. After the announcement of the new company at the Brown Electronics CEO inauguration party, the news appeared in the economic sections of both business magazines and general newspapers, including my background as the incoming president. I'd wonder if Smith will come across that information. I officially announced myself as Sam Brown, the president of the newly established company. I had previously told my mother that I would revert to my original name once the hotel division became independent. Still, she was very worried and repeatedly asked if it was truly all right. But I'm no longer a child. I'm a fully grown adult. Even if something bad were to happen, I wouldn't just be silently taken away. I can fight for myself, Mom. Think about it. I'm turning 30 soon. Of course, I've had 2 major illnesses, and who knows if I might get sick again. But isn't that true for everyone? I managed to convince my mother, and she finally agreed. Though I haven't attended school, I learned a lot during the time I couldn't go and built different kinds of connections. I plan to use these assets to solidify the foundation of the hotel division and grow the new company that sprouted from there. Certainly, academic background is important. However, there are many in this world who simply couldn't follow that path. I hope our company can also be a place for those who have gained something through paths other than school. It's not just about selling a lot and improving sales performance, it's about growing people in various ways too. That's my goal. Thus, saying goodbye to the name Williams that protected me until I could stand on my own, I vowed to achieve these goals as my true self, Sam Brown.